And seatbelt feature.
Oh yeah, you know, I'm not sure I put that in. I thought I did. That's a lot. This is our little midnight hike. This photo was taken at midnight. The sun very low, but still not below the hills. And then fog bank starts rolling in. One thing about the cold Arctic Ocean offshore is that when there's moisture in the air, it condenses the fog. Condenses as fog and comes and goes almost instantaneously. You can see it'll get really foggy once in a while, and then all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. You know, the humidity level changes, the dew point changes, and it's gone. All these were taken right around midnight. Looking the other way. There's that little fog rolling in, and 10 minutes later, basically, it was gone. Here's an iceberg breaking up. It's hard to picture in still photos, an iceberg breaking up. But you can see the waves, and you can almost hear the crack, breaks up, and then the whole thing starts to rock for a while, and then it stabilizes itself. That's exactly at midnight, I think. It was, you know, 2 weeks after this, of course, the sun would set a little bit for a few minutes, and then night gets longer by about 10 to 15 minutes a day as it starts to get into August. Like now, there would be some almost darkness there, not quite. That cliff is 3,500 feet, straight up from the water. We paddled along that later on the next day. And on the top of this hill, other people have been here in the past. 1959, NR was there, and he or she left a mark that the lichens haven't been able to overcome yet. So in almost 50 years, it's still there. That's how slow lichen grows. Those are same kind of lichen we have here, actually, on the rocks on Moose Lake. Our last little sandy spit campsite off the shore, where it's probably 400 feet deep. A fisherman showed up on one of these nights, and he fished all night long and all day the next day, and came in to get bait. The cattleman netted a bunch of bait, went back out fishing, and we paddled out to see him and said, "Hey, how would you like to sell a couple of those fish?" Because we weren't having such great luck. And he was catching on a long line on every single hook. I thought, almost every hook, maybe every hook, either a halibut, which is most of what they catch, or rosefish, or a wolffish. So there's Russ taking a picture over the side of his boat, and he's holding up a couple of those two fairly rare species. I call it a wolffish. I'm sure there are other names for it, and the red one's a rosefish, and they're highly prized. So they were a little too expensive for our blood. We bought halibut. And it was pretty good. And kayaking along those huge cliffs with a fisheye lens, a 3,500 foot cliff looks like a little molehill, but it's the only way to get the whole cliff in. When you're in the shadow of these cliffs, it feels very cold, and then you get into the sun, and all of a sudden it's instantaneous warmth. But there's absorption of your own radiant heat off the cliff, and it just sucks the heat right out of you in these shadows. Oh yeah, here's the iceberg with it. Yeah. There you go. The gull taking off, raucous gull, pure white. We ran into the only other paddlers we saw, two Germans, on a 5.5-week tour of Uminok fjords, and they were using bending branches paddles from Wisconsin. There's the captain again. I'm going to zip through these kind of fast. That's the fisherman netting some of his bait. And us enjoying a campfire with scrap wood that blows around in these places, where it floats around and comes up on shore in the rack, and frying up some we were out there just for the halibut, and we found it. That was it. I think we had started the cocktail hour at that time.
It's 4th of July?
No, this is the cooking, the last day, and came up with our last batch of whatever we had left. also was able to come up with a recipe for raisin cinnamon rolls.
Yes, he had yeast.
Apparently the ice went on a little too fast for this guy because he left his sled behind on the island last spring. And we're getting ready to go here for our last motor trip back to Uminok. So they pick us up, and at 30 miles an hour or so, or 20 miles an hour, we zip back 30 miles to Uminok. This is Storen Island that I told you I love so much. Just so beautiful. That each one of those hills is over 1,500 feet. Well, Uminok itself, that mountain is 3,000 feet. So it's just hard to get a perspective on these things because they're so big and they're so far away. Hotel Uminok. I'm going to turn this over to Sarah. Great.
Right. So we're back at the hotel in Uminok, and this man is Jonas Nielsen, who is a dear friend of Steve. Our kayaks were living in his basement, above ground basement. I mean, everything's above ground because it's all rock.
We have to keep him as a
But he
friend,
came to, yes, he came to have a meal with us and then talk to us at great length about the history of the place. And then he took us over to a little church. He met us there and gave us kind of a lecture that he gives tour groups often. Danish tour groups come through this place. And so we sat inside and he talked about the history of the place. He had been educated in Denmark because he had a Danish stepfather. And there were little kids everywhere, beautiful as they are everywhere. I love this shirt. It says, let's see, if life isn't fun, you are doing it wrong. And so we wandered the village. We saw these towns have more dogs than people. And this is an island which had a bunch of dogs that were easier for me to look at because when they're on land, they're all chained up. The puppies are not chained up, but the dogs are all chained up and they're not treated as pets. There's no relationship formed with them. And I was thinking even our draft animals, you often know Nellie and, interact with her. We were ordered not to interact with them. They're part wolf. They're not at all socialized. So we didn't, although my daughter played with the puppies every time she got a chance. Here's another one on that. I think this one, is it tied up? Yeah. You can see they spend all summer chained. They don't, in the winter, they get to pull sleds and they're clearly, you can imagine that they're ecstatic to get put in front of a sled and just go run, but it was hard to see. Here's here's the cemetery. A lot of it's sort of above ground. And these are scenes of the town and the wharf. Most of the crates appeared to be Tuborg beer, but I'm sure they import other things than that. And, families and children and a bunch of men who sit and talk to each other all day long in front of the... And this is an example of the older style of building that is now a little museum. So we could go inside and look at it. Here's Steve and his parents.
Yes, that's the mom and dad.
And drying fish, which gives you a glimpse. And these are excursion boats. You can tell tourism is becoming a real part of their economy. When the boats come in, and then local people have these boats that they. What is it? The hotel owner?
Those were actually fishing boats.
Those were fishing boats. Yeah, they are. Well.
I think Russ, this is Russ on the bench with the boys. I think he stayed. Did he come with us on the way home? I don't know.
It looks like he belongs there. Yeah. I love this picture just because of the march of colors, the shapes and the colors of and the laundry. That's our hotel right there. And there's the town of Uminok with all those colorful buildings on. You don't own the land around your house. You only get